An American soldier in Iraq discovered a radio frequency that no one at the base could identify, and every single night, for 31 days, the same voice came through. By the time the 31st night ended, that soldier had filed 3 separate reports, and every single one of them was quietly removed from the official record. What you are about to hear is not a story that made headlines. It happened in the years when American soldiers were stationed across Iraq, living through things that never made it into any official briefing. This is one of those things. It was the summer of 2005. Forward Operating Base Marez sat on the outskirts of Mosul in northern Iraq. The heat during the day reached 43 degrees Celsius, and by night, the desert cooled just enough to make the air feel like something you could almost breathe. Specialist Daniel Cruz was 24 years old. He had been in Iraq for 7 months. He was from a small town in rural Ohio where his father had worked the same factory floor for 30 years. Daniel had joined the United States Army not out of urgency, but out of a quiet sense of direction. He was not the loudest man in his unit. He was the one who listened. He was the one who noticed things. His assignment at Forward Operating Base Marez was communications monitoring, a straightforward role in theory. Sit at the equipment, track the frequencies, log the traffic, make sure nothing unusual came through. In a place like Mosul in 2005, unusual was not a word anyone used lightly, but what Daniel encountered during those 31 nights was something that even the most experienced signals officers at the base could not place into any known category. It began on a Tuesday in late July. Daniel was alone in the communications room running a standard sweep of the radio spectrum. The room was small. It smelled like burned coffee and recycled air. The fluorescent light above him flickered every few minutes in a pattern so consistent he had started timing it out of habit. It was just past 2 in the morning local time when his equipment landed on a frequency that was not on any of the authorized lists. It was not a military band. It was not a civilian broadcast band. It sat in a range that, according to every reference document Daniel had access to, should have been completely silent. And then a voice came through. It was not speaking English, it was not speaking Arabic, it was not speaking any language that Daniel could identify. In the moment, he sat completely still for what he later described as somewhere between 30 seconds and 3 minutes. He could not be certain how long it lasted because something about the experience made his sense of time feel unreliable. The voice was calm. It did not sound distressed. It did not sound threatening. It sounded almost like someone reading something aloud to themselves, the way a person might read quietly in a library, not performing for anyone, just working through words on a page. Daniel logged the frequency. He noted the time. He wrote down everything he could observe, and he reported it the following morning to his supervising sergeant, a man named Sergeant First Class Raymond Hollis, who had been in the Army for 18 years. Sergeant Hollis listened to the report, reviewed the log, and told Daniel that unexplained frequency traffic was not uncommon in that region. He told him to continue monitoring and to flag it again if it returned. It returned the following night at the exact same time, 2:17 in the morning. The same frequency, the same voice. Daniel recorded it this time. He used the equipment available to him and captured what he could of the transmission. When he played it back the following morning for Sergeant Hollis, the room was quiet. For a long moment, Sergeant Hollis asked him to send the recording up the chain. He said he would look into it. He did not tell Daniel what he found because, as far as Daniel could ever determine, no answer ever came back down. By the end of the first week, the voice had appeared every single night without exception, always between 2:15 and 2:20 in the morning, always on the same frequency, always the same duration, which Daniel had now measured consistently at 4 minutes and 38 seconds. He had begun keeping a personal log separate from his official one, not because he was trying to hide anything, but because he wanted a record that he controlled. He wrote down the date, the exact time, the duration, and any observations about the quality of the signal, whether it was clear or faint, whether there was interference, whether anything in the surrounding environment seemed different. On the 9th night, he brought another soldier with him, a man named Private First Class Marcus Webb from Atlanta, Georgia, who worked in vehicle maintenance and had no particular background in communications. Marcus sat in the room and listened, and when the voice came through at 2:17, he looked at Daniel and said nothing for a long time, and then said that it did not sound like any language he had ever heard either. Marcus was not a man who was easily unsettled. Daniel had known him long enough to understand that, but Marcus did not come back to the communications room after that night. He told Daniel later that he did not have a good explanation for why he chose not to return. He just did not want to hear it again. The second week brought no new answers. It brought only continuation. The voice appeared on the 14th night, on the 15th, on the 16th. Each time the frequency was identical. Each time the duration was within seconds of 4 minutes and 38 seconds. Daniel submitted a second formal report. During the second week, this one went to the base intelligence officer, a captain whose name Daniel later declined to use in any of his conversations about the experience. The captain reviewed the report, asked Daniel several questions about the equipment he was using, suggested that there might be a technical explanation related to atmospheric interference, and told him to continue logging. Daniel asked whether anyone had identified the language. The captain said that the recording had been reviewed. He did not say by whom. He did not say what the conclusion was. He said only that the matter was being looked at and that Daniel should continue his standard duties. The third week was when the experience began to change. Daniel, by this point, had listened to the voice 20 nights in a row. He had listened carefully enough that he had started to notice patterns, not in the language, which remained unidentifiable to him, but in the rhythm of the transmission. There were pauses in the same places each night. There were what sounded like repeated phrases, though he could not confirm this without translation. The voice never rose in volume, it never broke, it never hesitated. It was consistent in a way that Daniel found increasingly difficult to explain as simple interference or bleed from another. Transmission interference was not consistent. Interference did not arrive at the same time every night for 3 weeks and last exactly 4 minutes and 38 seconds. On the 23rd night, Daniel noted in his personal log that he had begun to feel something he described as weight when he sat down at the equipment just before 2 in the morning. He was not afraid. He was clear about that in everything he said afterward. He was not afraid. He was aware in the way that a person becomes aware when they understand that something is happening around them that they do not have the tools to fully interpret. On the 28th night, the signal quality changed for the first time in 4 weeks. The voice came through differently. The frequency was the same, the time was the same, but the transmission had a quality that Daniel described as closer, as though the distance between the source and the receiver had somehow shortened. He sat very still. He listened to the full 4 minutes and 38 seconds, and when it ended, he wrote in his personal log a single line that he later shared. He wrote, "It sounds like it knows someone is listening." He submitted his third formal report. The following morning, he was detailed. He included his personal log. He included every measurement he had taken. He described the change in signal quality. He asked directly whether anyone had made progress identifying the source or the language. 3 days later, he was informed that his third report had been received and reviewed. He was told that the matter did not require further documentation. He was told to cease logging the frequency and to return to standard monitoring duties. He was not given an explanation. He was not told what had been concluded. He was not told whether anyone had identified the language or the source. The 31st night came a Wednesday in late August. Daniel sat at the equipment. He was not supposed to be monitoring that frequency anymore. He monitored it anyway. The voice came through at 2:17. It lasted 4 minutes and 38 seconds. It sounded exactly as it had on the first night, no closer, no farther, just the same calm, measured presence reading something aloud to no one and everyone at the same time. When it ended, Daniel sat in the quiet of the communications room for a long time. He did not file another report. He had understood by then that reports were not the mechanism through which this particular question was going to be answered. He packed up his personal log, he went back to his bunk, and he did not sleep. Daniel Cruz completed his deployment and returned to the United States in early 2006. He did not speak publicly about what he had experienced for several years. When he eventually did speak about it, he was careful. He did not make claims he could not support. He said only what he had observed. He said that for 31 consecutive nights a voice came through a frequency that should have been silent. He said that 3 formal reports he submitted were removed from the record. He said that no one ever told him what the voice was or what language it was speaking. He said that he still does not know. The frequency was never officially acknowledged.